Hello.
Hello. Welcome back to the programme. Our subject today is traditions, las tradiciones, and the English you can use to talk about them.
Now, Bernard has a second cousin, una prima segunda, who lives in America. And she's coming to visit Bernard and Valerie.
It's her first visit to England, so Bernard and Valerie plan an itinerary, un itinerario for her.
While you're watching, can you answer this question? What sort of traditions is Jessica interested in?
I got a phone call from Jessica today.
Jessica?
Your second cousin, the one who lives in America.
Oh, Jessica! Yes, I've heard of her. I've never met her, though. What's she doing?
She's a student, and she's coming over to England next month. She wants to stay with us for a few days.
Great!
She says she's very interested in history and tradition. She wants to have a look at some English traditions.
Well, I'm not surprised. They haven't got many traditions in America. They have fireworks on the 4th of July, and that's it.
That's not quite true, Bernard.
Well, we've got a lot to be proud of in this country. We have a great history and some fine traditions most people take for granted. It's so important to understand your heritage. Why don't we take a few days off work when Jessica is here? We could take her to some of the typically English places.
Yes, she might like that.
We could work out an itinerary. We can go to the Tower of London, where you can show her the Beefeaters and the Crown Jewels.
Do you know, I've never been to the Tower of London.
I don't think many English people have. We can go to Cambridge. We could see the King's College Chapel. We could go on the river in a boat and have a traditional English tea at Grantchester. You know, we've got a lot to be proud of in this country. I've got a brilliant idea. We could take her to the Henley Regatta, and we could take a hamper and some strawberries. Jessica will love that.
I'm so excited. I've always dreamed of seeing England.
You probably thought we lived in a little cottage which had a thatched roof and roses growing all over it.
No.
Or did you think we lived in a manor house or a castle with a moat and a drawbridge?
No. I didn't expect to see knights at the airport either.
We've worked out a wonderful itinerary for you. The first place we're going to visit is Cambridge, and then we're going to the Henley Regatta, we're visiting Harrods and the Tower of London, and on your final day we're going to go to a medieval banquet.
That sounds really interesting. But is it for American tourists?
There are some Americans.
Well, I don't want to meet American tourists.
There are Japanese and German tourists as well.
Do you know where Sheffield is?
It's up in the north of England somewhere. I don't think you'll find anything interesting up there.
There's an industrial museum I've heard about. I'd love to see it.
An industrial museum?
I'm interested in how real people lived. I mean, ordinary people.
Now, our question was, what sort of traditions is Jessica interested in?
There's an industrial museum I've heard about.
There's an industrial museum, un museo del trabajo, I've heard about.
I'm interested in how real people lived.
I'm interested in how real people lived.
Bernard and Valerie are interested in different sorts of tradition, aren't they?
Let's take a close look at the itinerary they planned for Jessica. Do you know any of the places they talked about?
We can go to the Tower of London, where you can show her the Beefeaters, the Crown Jewels, the first place we're going to visit is Cambridge. And then we're going to the Henley Regatta.
The Henley Regatta. Now, we're going back to our story. What has Jessica discovered about Bernard's family history?
I've traced the family back 8 generations.
Have you really? Well done.
I think our family has a strong culture and tradition that goes way back into history.
Oh, good.
Well, tell us.
Well, first, this side of the family, we're from Grimsby.
From where?
From Grimsby, in the northeast of England.
Grimsby.
For over 200 years, they were fishermen.
How interesting.
On this side of the family, great-great-great-great-great-great-great-Uncle John worked in the textile industry in Manchester. It was right at the start of the Industrial Revolution. And you know what? He became a shaker and emigrated to America.
He became a what?
A shaker. That was his religion.
How very odd.
So interesting, don't you think?
What is?
Well, on the one hand, there's religion, and on the other hand, there's fish. Don't you want to come with me to Grimsby and discover your family heritage?
Well, frankly, Jessica, I don't think I do.
They haven't got the same interests at all, have they?
No, and poor Bernard was quite shocked. Se quedó bastante sorprendido when Jessica told him about his family history.
This side of the family, we're from Grimsby.
This side of the family were from Grimsby.
Great-great-great-great-great-great-Uncle John worked in the textile industry in Manchester.
Trabajaba en la industria textil. Not the history that Bernard wanted.
And what did Jessica say were the 2 most interesting things about the family?
On the one hand, there's religion.
Por un lado está la religión. On the one hand, there's religion.
And on the other, there's fish.
Y por otro está el pescado. And on the other, there's fish.
On the one hand, on the other.
Now we're going to look at some language that's very useful when you're describing traditions. Es importante saber describir bien cualquier cosa.
I'm sure you know these words. Who and which.
Your second cousin, the one who lives in America.
Who? The one who lives in America. Utilizamos who cuando nos referimos a personas.
You probably thought we lived in a little cottage which had a thatched roof.
Which. A little cottage which had a thatched roof. Un tejado de paja. Utilizamos which cuando se trata de cosas.
And do you remember that? Pero se puede utilizar that en lugar de who y which al referirnos a personas o cosas.
For example, you can say, your second cousin, the one that lives in America.
And here you can say, a little cottage that had a thatched roof.
I think our family has a strong culture and tradition that goes way back into history.
Una cultura sólida y una tradición que se remontan a tiempos históricos. Our family had a strong culture and tradition that goes way back into history.
What can you say instead of that? You can say which. A strong culture and tradition which goes way back into history.
But that's all we have time for.
You've learned a lot of new language today. To practice some of it, imagine that some British friends are visiting Spain for the first time.
Yes, plan an itinerary for them to show them some of your favourite traditions and festivals. Make sentences like this. First, we're going to see Las Fallas de Valencia. Then we're going to... and so on.
Remember, do it
out loud and in English.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.